Picture this. It's the 7th century, and the world's fastest-growing superpower is on the brink of a massive crisis. Its leader, Caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab, has just been fatally wounded. And in his final moments, he has to answer a question that could literally tear his empire apart. Who comes next? What happened after that was one of the most incredible electoral processes in all of history. So let's dive in and see how it all went down.
So, right after the attack, they bring Caliph Umar back to his home. They try to give him some milk and date water, but it just seeps right out of his wounds. And that's when the doctor gives him the grim news. His death is certain. With the leader of this massive empire on his deathbed, suddenly the question of who succeeds him becomes the most urgent issue in the entire world.
You know, for Omar, his biggest worry wasn't even about his own fate. It was about ensuring a stable and just transition of power for the huge community he led. I mean, how do you prevent total chaos? How do you pick a worthy successor without just turning the caliphate into another monarchy?
A lot of people were urging him, hey, just do what all the kings and emperors do, appoint your son. But Umar's reaction? It was swift and it was a hard no. He flat out refused, saying he never wanted the leadership to become some kind of hereditary dynasty like the Roman or Persian empires. For him, the principle was way more important than his bloodline.
Okay, so if it's not going to be his son, then who? And how on earth do you choose? Well, Umar came up with this really innovative solution, something that was truly ahead of its time, a special electoral committee, whose job it was to choose the next leader from among themselves.
And we're not talking about just any men here. Umar nominated 6 of the most respected companions of the Prophet Muhammad. These guys were so esteemed that all 6 of them were part of a tiny group of only 10 people who had been told during their own lifetimes that they were guaranteed a place in paradise. This was a committee of absolute titans.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting, and you can see just how deep Umar's commitment to principle went. There were actually 7 of these incredible companions still alive. He nominated 6, but he deliberately left out the 7th, a man named Sa'id bin Zaid. And why? Because Sa'id was his cousin. On top of that, he barred his own son from even being a candidate, saying he could only be there as an advisor. This just shows his ironclad resolve to keep family out of the succession.
And Umar laid out some really clear and strict rules. First, the 6 men were to be isolated in a house right after his burial. Second, they had only 3 days to make a decision. That's it. Third, to make sure there was no outside influence or lobbying, 50 armed guards would stand outside. And finally, whatever they decided, that choice was absolute and binding on every single person.
So the moment Umar passed away, the clock started ticking. You've got these 6 powerful men locked in a room with the weight of the entire empire on their shoulders. But you know what? The field of candidates started to narrow down really fast.
Okay, so we start with these 6 men. And it was a pretty balanced group, you know. On one side, you had 3 famous military generals, and on the other, 3 men known for their wisdom and piety. Then, almost right away, something pretty remarkable happens. The 3 military leaders, they withdraw from the race. Just like that. Instead of trying to grab power for themselves, they cast their votes for the 3 civilian candidates. And boom, in an instant, the pool of contenders is cut in half.
And just like that, there were 3. Abdul Rahman ibn Auf, Uthman ibn Affan, and Ali ibn Abi Talib. The choice for the next leader of the Islamic world now lay between these 3 giants.
But then came another huge twist. Abdul Rahman ibn Auf, who was a hugely respected figure, also withdrew his name. He just declared that he had absolutely no desire to be the caliph. And this move was crucial, because it didn't just leave 2 candidates, it basically positioned him as the kingmaker, the ultimate decider.
So just think about this. The leadership of the most powerful state in the world had now come down to just 2 men, Uthman ibn Affan and Ali ibn Abi Talib.
With all of that responsibility now sitting squarely on his shoulders, Abdul Rahman did something truly extraordinary. Instead of just making the decision alone in a quiet room, he decided to, well, take the pulse of the nation. He turned his vote into a massive public consultation. And the 2 finalists presented a really clear contrast. You had Uthman, who was about 70 years old. He was known for his mild nature and his incredible generosity. And then you had Ali, much younger, around 45, famous for his warrior spirit and his very strict by-the-book approach, kind of like Caliph Omar had been. So the people really had a choice between a gentle, elderly statesman and a strong-willed younger leader. So for the next couple of days, Abdul Rahman literally walked the streets of Medina,
basically conducting the first ever opinion poll for a head of state. And he didn't just talk to the elites or the army commanders. No, he consulted everyone. The young people, the women of the city. He even went to the city's slaves to ask for their opinion. It was an unbelievably inclusive process.
So after talking with every part of society, a pretty clear picture started to emerge. Everybody agreed both men were more than qualified to lead. But the popular mood seemed to favor Theismon. It seemed that after 10 years of Umar's very strict rule, people were kind of yearning for a leader known for gentleness and generosity.
The 3-day deadline was up. At the dawn prayer, the Prophet's mosque in Medina was packed to capacity, just buzzing with anticipation. Everyone was silent, just waiting for one name to be announced.
Abdul Rahman stood up in front of the massive crowd. He first called Ali forward. Taking his hand, he asked him a very specific question. Would he govern according to the Quran, the tradition of the Prophet, and the precedent set by the first two caliphs, Abu Bakr and Omar?
And Ali, who was known for being scrupulously honest, he gave this very sincere but careful answer. He basically said that he would do his absolute utmost, but that he would apply his own judgment where he felt it was needed. His reply was, "I will do my best."
Abdurrahman then let go of Ali's hand and called for Uthman, who was sitting way at the back of the crowded mosque, and he posed the exact same question to him. The entire congregation just held its breath.
But Uthman's answer was different. It was simple, direct, and completely unconditional. Without adding anything else, he just replied, "Yes, I will." And that was the deciding moment. Abdurrahman raised his hands, looked towards the heavens, and declared that he was transferring this immense responsibility to Uthman, naming him the third caliph. And then, in this powerful display of unity, the very first person to step forward and pledge his allegiance to the new caliph was his rival, Ali.
You know, this whole remarkable event, blending consultation, principle, and public opinion, is one of the earliest examples of an electoral process for a major head of state. And it raises a timeless question for all of us. In our own world of complex politics, what can this ancient model of choosing a leader teach us about the balance between elite decision-making and the will of the people today?